Hey, everybody. Welcome. It is February 12th, 2026. You are watching or listening to the Daily AI Show, and this is episode 659. We're 670 tomorrow. Very nice. No, 659 plus 1 is 660. We're 660 tomorrow. All right. Thanks to Cisco and Jeff already in the chat. Cisco is strapped in and ready to learn. Love this. And hey, Jude. Andy, you weren't here yesterday, but we did a really big deep dive into Matt Schumer's essay about getting ready and the importance of the message to get ready in what's just dropped, which needs a little bit of explanation for people outside of the coding world. But that also means we didn't touch any news. So is there something you want to say about the Matt Schumer, or do you have a news story that we should just...
Well, I followed that yesterday. Principally, the thing that I would add that I don't know many have talked about is that Gary Marcus, he was a skeptic on a lot of the sort of hype wheels that turn out there in the world of AI. He posted an email basically about Matt Schumer's gushing, anticipation of the dramatic changes, and said it's not all that. And Gary Marcus has been, historically, he's turned out to be somewhat right around the whole question of whether LLMs generally are going to be capable enough to achieve artificial general intelligence. And he's a major proponent of moving towards alternatives like neurosymbolic AI. He feels that we'll have to not abandon LLMs, they'll have their place, but in order to get to the true systems, we'll have to, follow a different path. And a number of the major thought leaders in AI, like those who have gone out and formed world model type development agencies, those folks are kind of in alignment with what Gary Marcus is saying. It's not enough to just have an LLM. And so the forecasts, like the ones that Matt Schumer predicts, are likely not, going to come to pass. At least they won't come to pass as quickly as they suggest. And I have, a related story that I want to kind of spend a little bit of time on about Mustafa Suleyman, who's another important player in this world. But let me turn it back to you, Beth. I'll add that later. But Mustafa has also put out a warning, and I'll provide the credentials behind which he puts forward this warning about just how disruptive AI is going to be with respect to human work.
Right. And that, I think, if we look across the multi-messages, it is kind of the underlying message. It's not that everybody's prediction is accurate in terms of when it's going to happen, who it's going to happen for, those kinds of things. But it is, but it is important to at least be entertaining the conversation. What's happening in the chat is Jeff is saying Gary Marcus is a wet blanket, but sometimes we need a dose of wet blanket. And Cisco is saying wet blankets are actually useful during fires. So, no. All right.
So let me just hit one other one here, a news item that I think is interesting, and that is QuitGPT. So there's a movement forming out there called QuitGPT, and it's grown in 1 week from 112,000 people, signing on to it, to 700,000 supporters. It urges users to cancel OpenAI ChatGPT accounts over OpenAI's political ties, because in September, just a few months ago, FEC filings showed that OpenAI President Greg Brockman donated $25 million to Trump's MAGA Inc. super PAC.
Right.
And it's like, oh, this is where, our subscription revenue is going. And if you really want to be activist, then, you are being invited to, move over to another model and quit your ChatGPT subscription. So I think that's just an interesting thing that's fomented out there. I don't know that it'll ever displace a sufficient number of free and paid users of ChatGPT to move the needle, but it's interesting. Actor Mark Ruffalo endorsed the campaign on Instagram, and his post received more than 1.5 million likes.
Right. And just to be clear, Jeff is also pointing out that was specifically from Greg. That was a personal.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now, where did his personal money come from, though, is I guess the point.
Right. There does seem to be more activism that I'm seeing in a different way. Higgsfield's account got suspended on X, and I mentioned this before, but there were a couple of X users specifically kind of running their own campaign of talking to the people who were posting about Higgsfield. One of the complaints was that Higgsfield makes an offer. It's pretty easy to get into their creator program. You get an assignment about what you want, what they're looking for in the promo that you're doing, but then you need to say that you're doing it for a paid promotion, because that's actually the law when you're doing something for a paid promotion. I believe part of why that isn't necessarily happening is that it's kind of a competition. You do it, you post it, you then submit it to them, and maybe they pay you, right? But there were also all kinds of discussion around that it was really easy to produce pornographic images in Higgsfield, and also that Higgsfield's set what Higgsfield does. We did a show on it. What Higgsfield does is give you a bunch of templates that you could just put something into, and that also was someone's IP, right? And so it seemed kind of moving very quickly for the profit and kind of fast and loose. And that was another interesting thing that I think in terms of activism and individual people saying, hey, this right here is something that I think is wrong, and I want to point out that you have a choice. That was that discussion. Higgsfield is not unique Higgsfield is unique, but it's not the only access to any of these models. And you are making a choice to do that there.
Yeah. So I want to now spend just a few minutes. Oh yeah, thanks, Cisco. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I'm torn because I don't like to give up any one of the tools that I have become accustomed to and invested time and effort in. But 90% of my time right now is being spent in Anthropic's tools. So I don't think I would miss ChatGPT much. Given just the extensive competence of the Anthropic platform, and Gemini's waiting there for me too. And I have a lot of Google related tools, and I'm going to show you in a little bit. I'm going to show you a graphic that lays out all of the tools in the artificial analysis framework, which takes a bunch of different benchmarks and grades them on the artificial intelligence index, and shows where those models are. So that's coming up. And, ChatGPT has a place near the top there, but they're not the top one. So anyway, yeah.
Well,
responsible.
And it depends. They're not the top one, but it depends what your usage.
What you're using. That's
right. Yeah, likely. So. I'm putting up Jeff's comment. Don't do it, Codex for life, because for people who are doing serious code, that is.
Yeah, it is. The motivation for leaving ChatGPT is really, it's a political action that is related to concern about the degradation of democracy, funded by people who are putting money behind the lie machine that is, our current administration plus Fox News and Newsmax, etc. All of that is really corrupting U.S. democracy, which is visible to the entire globe. And anyway, that's what's going on there. So anyway, let me talk now about Mustafa Suleyman, because it's related to activism. So Mustafa Suleyman currently is the head of AI at Microsoft. He's the Microsoft AI CEO. So this is a very important platform from which Mustafa Suleyman can speak. But now I, like you, I'm sure, find it difficult to, keep in mind who's on the dance card out there, all these major players. Greg Brockman's one, Mustafa Suleyman is another. And this is not about political activism now. So setting aside that, QuitGPT thing, this is about Mustafa Suleyman. So let me tell you who he is, because I didn't really grok it, to use the science fiction term for understanding. So he started out, he went to Oxford, and he was a philosophy major, but he dropped out at age 19. He worked as a human rights policy officer for London Mayor Ken Livingstone, focusing on social and rights issues. So now you get an idea. Is this philosopher guy? He's interested in, human interest issues. And after that, he founded a consultancy that was focused on systemic change, assisting governments in conflict resolution and to tackle complex social and climate challenges. So this is a very, very activist kind of mentality, rooted in philosophy, but obviously brilliant in lots of different ways, because in 2010, he co-founded, along with Demis Hassabis, what became Google DeepMind. But DeepMind Technologies, the AI machine learning company, and he was the chief product officer and head of applied AI. Then, as you know, Google acquired DeepMind in 2014, just 4 years later, for a reported somewhere around 500 million pounds. After which he led their applied research and commercialization efforts. So he's a product-oriented guy. He's not necessarily the deep coding architect of these things, but he's got applied research in his portfolio at DeepMind. So he's integrating technology into Google products, and kind of like, think of this as another person whose dance card is out there, Fiji Simo, who is over at OpenAI as the president of or CEO of their productization effort. Okay, so he then moved from DeepMind into Google proper as the vice president of AI products and AI policy overall. So this is a very high level product strategy. And anyway, major thing. Now, he left Google and co-founded Inflection AI. And if you remember Pi was very advanced in conversational AI, and it was a major advancement away from the simple chat responses that came out. And it didn't really catch on as a personal AI assistant, but it was a very considerable accomplishment in terms of technical and product architecture to deliver this conversational assistant platform that now we're all experiencing with voice. But Microsoft picked him up and his company and most of its team and built then into Microsoft's AI infrastructure. Now, that's a long-winded introduction, but I think it's useful to kind of get a reminder about who some of these players are and some of their background. Well, anyway.
So just another piece, Andy, because he wrote the book, The Coming Wave.
Oh, yes.
One about
book, yeah.
Right? It was before, I think it was before Malik's book came out, but it was one of those like, oh, okay, this is a guy who's in it, thinking really hard about it.
Yeah, and definitely worth a reread. I listened to it on audiobooks, and I promoted it heavily here on this show several years ago. because it was a worthwhile read. So go find The Coming Wave. Get AI to do a summary of the major points if you don't have time to listen to the whole thing. Okay, anyway, so this is the background of this person, and he just had an interview with the Financial Times. And in that Financial Times interview, he said that AI will automate most white-collar tasks within 18 months. So this is a person thinking carefully, deeply rooted in whatever's going on behind the scenes in AI. And he's saying white-collar jobs are on the block.
All right. And I think what I was seeing in the Ethan Mollick pushback to Matt, actually, but I think it probably relates to this as well, is that when we see these kinds of statements, it implies an across the board. And what is more likely to happen, and Ethan's word, is that it's jagged, right? It goes really high in some areas and doesn't quite get the other areas, right? So when we're talking about this as like a warning and across the board, it isn't really like all of the dominoes falling in like a perfect alignment. That's unlikely to be what happens. Although, as humans in community, when we see a domino fall, we do like to just jump onto the following dominoes. But the likelihood is that individual tasks and individual work is different enough that it will affect, in experience, it will feel more jagged than just an across the board. But that doesn't mean at the end of it, all of the dominoes haven't been affected, right?
Hey, Carl.
Yeah. Hey, Carl.
What's happening?
Welcome. We're going through news. We're talking about what's gonna happen as we're affecting. I have two Anthropic stories. One was that Anthropic committed to paying the difference in costs if your electricity bill is getting affected by data center needs, and I have not seen that. That's a commitment. I'm not sure that I've seen the calculations that identify, like, we've taken a picture right now and it won't go up. I'm not sure how all that is coming out, but it is a commitment. And
I don't think it is an important commitment, but I don't think it's going to be they're going to pay our electric bills. They're going to pay for infrastructure costs necessary to power their data centers. So that means they're going to pay for the interconnects, the actual investment there. They're going to pay higher electricity charges than consumers pay in order to offset the demand impacts of that.
And that's what I meant.
Yeah, that's what you mean. The implication sounded a little bit like they were going to help us pay our bills, but they, in general, that's true. Yeah.
Right. It's not that they're going to help us pay our bills. They're recognizing that if nothing changed and all the usage went up, that everybody's bill would go up, and they're saying we'll take on that piece.
That's right. And another thing they're going to do is they're going to invest heavily in curtailment systems, as they describe them, which is, when data centers power usage is coinciding with peak demand by consumers, they're going to throttle back, right? They're not going to overload the system with the demand that's probably simultaneous, right? Because many users are consumers who happen to spend power when they're back at home, not while they're at the office, and who knows how to organize and coordinate all of that with a curtailment system that's going to automatically throttle in order to reduce peak demand.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Cisco is saying that's not different to what OpenAI has said. I do believe OpenAI has also come out with a commitment. I'm not sure that it gave as much detail. And yes, I do think that we're watching an interesting I don't know, two bullies on a school field, like trying to outdo each other because the other piece of AI news, which is great. Like, yes, absolutely. Please compete with each other to do really great things for your users. I have no problem with that. But Anthropic also came out today with information talking about what you can access on the free plan, and you can access Claude Code and Co-Work features like using Claude in Excel. It can create files for you, like those kinds of things that were restricted. You had to pay for it. Now it's part of the free tier. I suspect you can do that a limited amount of time for a large time window, which is what everybody gets in the window that caps usage. But you can definitely get the experience of having it.
Yeah. On that, I think that we have to add something that Anthropic got some shade about. And I don't know who it was, but it's some venture capitalist. I don't know if you saw this story, but some venture capitalist got a lot of press. It was in a number of newsletters that I saw over the past week, where he had given Claude Code basically access to his machines, and it had inadvertently deleted on his wife's system all of their photos for their entire family archive of every photo and video that had ever been taken of their children and everything else. And he said, I almost had a heart attack. It wiped 15 years of family memories off of the board. And this is my deep fear is that, like all of this just vaporizes when you have it in the cloud or wherever. But the good news is that when that happens, if you are an Apple user, then iCloud actually has, even after deletion from iCloud, it has a 30-day window where it retains that information. And by going to that level, now this is a VC, so he has direct access. So he got all the stuff back. There's a happy ending to the story.
So
it wasn't because of AI. It was because of the iCloud storage rules, and so there was a way to recover that even beyond what the normal human could do, but it required Apple's intervention in order to do that.
So it's interesting. There are a couple things that are interesting about that. One is I've seen a related story, not this story, but somebody's drive got corrupted and Claude Code was able to piece together the content of the wedding video, right? So just from individual pieces and then imagining what was missing in the middle and those sorts of things.
Yeah, and what was really great about it was that the bride looked even better in this new video.
And the other piece that is interesting, that's sort of the ever argument about, is Apple late to the party, right? Like, is Apple's missing out on the AI? They made wrong moves, and pointing out that in fact Apple's hardware seems to be the preferred hardware for all of the people who went out and wanted to create their own OpenClaw instance at home, right? And people who are taking that to the extreme are now not just buying the Mac Mini, but the Mac Studio, because that can run an open model and do all of that stuff. So it's kind of interesting. Carl, what are you thinking about this morning? Do you have views or thoughts?
Well, there's I was more looking at, there was a couple clips that I saw yesterday. I want to play them. They're kind of funny.
Okay.
From Seedance. Did we talk about Seedance yesterday? No, we didn't talk about, we talked specifically with the Matt Schumer article. I remember that. So I wanted to just, yes, you know what? I'll just do my start screen. I'll play the audio too. Okay. So you guys bring that up.
Yep.
Okay. So 2 things here. This one, both of them are funny, right? This one was Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise.
There's no audio there.
You can't get the audio on that? Oh, right. Okay, hold on to the audio. Anyway, so that was.
But we could see what we saw Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise on
Actually,
Atlantic top fighting fist to fist.
I'll play it again because the audio is actually the funniest part of this entire thing. Okay, I'm gonna go here and then
these are small, right? These are 15-second clips, and you can extend it and do that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But and most people don't have access to Seedance yet. But we've talked a bunch about our vision for what Netflix could do. You could literally, you could say what movie you want to watch, and then you could watch it because it gets made. And this is, let's do it.
Okay, so the reason why you killed Jeffrey Epstein, you animal! He was a good man!
He knew too much about our Russia operations. He had to die, and now you die too.
Anyway, that was part of the entire thing. I was like, that's a bit... And then, obviously... And
He never listened!
That doesn't look like George Costanza.
No, it does. It doesn't look like George Costanza. And then obviously we saw the Will Smith eating the spaghetti, which is the new standard of that, right? The new standard of, hey, how good is this model? It has to eat the spaghetti really well, right? So the comment I made was, China doesn't give a crap about our copyright. They don't. You can create whatever you want with anybody's like this. And it's funny because one of the people I follow said, what are you going to do? Sue China? China's not going to care. They're going to. So Seedance, that's going to, Kling, those two are, when I go to Higgsfield, those two are my go-to models. So good. VO3 is okay. 3.1, I think, but like those two, the motion control on Kling is outstanding. And then what Seedance is doing, once that comes out, it's going to be, that is ridiculous. Like, I don't know how many iterations we are away. Like, George Costanza's face is a little wonky. People's faces are still not quite there yet. But like that Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise, that was the fight scenes. Obviously, they look they're not there yet, but like it's very, very close. We're like getting a little closer. So yeah, I thought that was kind of neat.
So I have a weave off of that one. So we're talking about Chinese models. I teed up earlier in the show before you were here, Carl, that I want to share a graphic about where the models are stacking up now, including the Chinese models. So let's see if we can get this up on the screen. There we go. Okay, so this is a graphic that kind of lays out the competitive field of AI. And here's the Artificial Analysis Intelligence Index. And the arrow that you see there is from the company Z.AI, which just released its GLM-5 model.
Right.
And what they're showing here is the advancement from their most recent release, GLM 4.7. This is an open source model, and so is GLM-5. And you see it ranks on the Artificial Analysis Intelligence Index number 4, just behind Claude Opus 4.5. Claude Opus 4.6 is the number 1 model, and GPT 5.2, not yet 5.3, is at number 2 position. Then Claude Opus repeats with 4.5. They're deprecating model now, but GLM-5, an open source model from Z, is right up there, and it's ahead of Gemini 3 Pro Preview High. That's pretty impressive work for that. And you see on this other benchmark, GDP val, which is real world tasks performance, GLM-5 is also number 4 behind GPT 5.2 and 2 versions of Claude Opus. pretty impressive. And I hadn't really followed Z, but let me just give you a few little factoids about Z. It was formerly Zhipu AI. It's the Chinese artificial intelligence company that spawned out of Tsinghua University. It's one of the leading large language models. That GLM stands for General Language Model. And it's focused on advanced reasoning, coding, and long horizon agentic tasks like the frontier models, and it's right up there. By the way, they've been invested by both Alibaba and Tencent, who are also major AI model developers out there. So anyway, that's Chinese models advancing here on the open source front, but also at the level of the frontier.
And it's interesting. I had a conversation with Grok about this because I was trying to figure out why this is relevant for people who are using models on like a daily basis. You can access this model on Open Router, right? And you can access the model on Hugging Face directly. Like there's a chat interface for it. But it's so big that you wouldn't actually run this locally unless you had access to like an H100 or something like that. Because when I hear open source, I hear you can run it on like these are the models that are edge use cases. So you can run it locally. You can have it do computer control potentially on your own system. I think what's exciting about this open source and the piece that really made sense to me is that the weights are open. And so you could actually use this giant, very capable model to like change the weights and do something, make it closer to something that you wanted it to do. But that's like an enterprise research lab kind of question, I think. Do I have that right?
That's right. These aren't, excuse me, these aren't models that you would run locally, but they're probably, there are frameworks like Hugging Face where you can run it, but it's up there operating in the cloud. And you can also, I think, this is not my area of expertise, and Carl, you may know more about this, but I think there are platforms that will do a distillation of a model. You can choose an open source model, mount it on one of these platforms, and create a tuned distillation of that. So that instead of being at whatever GLM5 is, like 700 billion parameters or who knows what, you can get one down into the 25 to 50 billion range, and then you could run that locally on a high-end machine.
Right.
So an enterprise could use GLM5, or the other ones like Kimi K2 is a serious contender for that, while it doesn't stack up nearly as well as GLM5 does against the frontier models.
Well, and this is something we've talked about, Carl, in terms of these kinds of visuals that show us the layout in like equally spaced but different height stack implies an across the board kind of thing without identifying use case outside of whatever that was testing, right? And it may just be that the difference now is not as relevant to I want to say muggles, but Carl, you said so much lately about no, the muggles are like, no AI, they're not caring about what the model can do. They're like, I don't want the model to do my thing that I do. So maybe it's not the muggles, but it like, are we at a place where, yeah, that's better, but I don't think I care?
Well, there was this post yesterday from someone I know who was saying kind of like, you could kind of see it where they're exaggerating how all LinkedIn posts were, if you don't use AI, takes your job. Our company's now AI. Like there's a lot of posts about that. And, the Matt Schumer article is just another example. He didn't mention that, but like, people obviously used it as part of their content. So back to the point yesterday where like you get inundated with this is going to change, you need to do this, you need to do this, to the point where like I don't really want to do this, like this is not, like I just want to do my job. So yeah, again back to the capability overhang, we're just and it's really cool because I'm excited about using all these things, and we all use it to its close to max capabilities. We're really pressing whatever we're using, yet most people aren't. But I think like we talked about this a while back, like, so Andy, Beth, Brian, Aaron, like all the folks that are Anne, like all the folks that are on our show and Junmi and so on, we have like essentially leveled up our skill set and compounded everything we've learned piece by piece by piece, right? Remember we were talking about like how to build a basic RAG back in April 2023, like, but take that knowledge and now we understand the frameworks of that as we start talking about GPTs, as we start talking about things, but we already have that base knowledge and then we just add on to it. You're like, oh, we don't really need RAG because of these reasons, or hey, we get the AI agent to do this work for us. So we're just compounding our skill every day, every time we use AI. But if people don't do that, you can't compound your skill. So either you just don't have the skills to do it, or maybe the AI gets so easy that you don't need to learn all those skills. It just becomes do it and it'll do it. I just don't think that it's that good that it can do that. And this is where you get, oh, I tried to use AI and it doesn't work. Okay, we'll all ask, what did you use? When did you use it? What task did you use it for? Is it grounded or not grounded? Like, there's so many things we would ask because we know all this. The regular folk is like, no, I used it once and it didn't work, and so it sucks. Oh, Beth, you're on mute.
Yes, I was thinking about this the other day because the current instruction seems to be tell AI what you want it to do, and maybe tell it what you want it to do as if it's an intern, so you'd need to create context, right? If you can give the instructions to your summer intern about what you want, you can give the instructions to AI. And what I think that potentially misses for the people that you are talking about, Carl, is the things that you wouldn't need to tell a human, but you do need to tell AI, right? They're just things that being human in a physical space with other people that you would not need to say because that's part of a human experience in the world. And those like funky pieces are, I think, where like I did the thing. I did what you said. I told it to do it. I gave it instructions like an intern, but it still made really stupid, non-human kind of moves. And I think that's part of the piece of compounding skill and getting used to those kinds of things. Thoughts?
I think that, well, we've been saying this all the time, and it's not going to change. Like, to actually think about using AI whenever you do anything is a very hard thing to do. Just thinking about, like, we all probably still do. It's like, oh, I could probably use AI for that. And
right.
But we're kind of like, a lot of people who are really good at it know when to break the rule and when not to, right? So like, there's always, whatever field you're in, you have that. There's always these set standard rules. Like, for example, in filmmaking, you have the 3-point lighting, and you have like, ideally you do 3-point lighting for most of your interviews. But if you know, if you're at, like, if you understand the rule enough, you can break it, right? Because you can make it more artistic or cinematic or whatever. So in AI, it's like, if you know the general rule, so it's like not rules, but like groundwork. So like, oh, in AI, you got to prompt it this way, this way, this way. But because we know it, we can also break the rule or break that, but we understand why we're breaking it. I don't know if people get that. You're well into expertise, or you've done it, you have enough experience that you know, oh, I'm breaking the rule because I know this is the outcome, but I'm breaking it in a way that it would still work, versus those who don't have that, they're just breaking it. So that's how I kind of see it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if it's not part of a conscious thought, then it just takes longer to assess it.
Yes.
Right? Like if I make the recipe and I don't use salt and I up the spice, then I have some thought about what created the experience I had after I made the recipe. And if you're just breaking it, and in fact, that is one of my learning cases, periodically to go back to not just the prompts that worked and not just the GPTs, but the conversations that I was having when it worked really well. And inevitably, it is not the model that did the thing. I stopped giving the same kind of context. And so I'm getting different results. But yeah. So one thing that happened yesterday that we have not mentioned is that Elon and XAI had a big public all hands, they called it, session. They announced that they are splitting into 4 specialized teams: Grok, AI chat, coding, Imagine, which is the video, and Macro Hard, which is
My favorite.
Microsoft.
Yes.
a unit focused on full computer automation and simulating entire corporations. They're also pivoting towards space-based infrastructure. We knew that before. They're really interested in putting data centers in space that are powered by 24/7 solar. And that seemed like one of the main reasons SpaceX would reportedly build an electromagnetic mass driver to shoot satellite components into deep space for massive AI clusters. So it was a very Elon moment, right? There was a lot of like, this is my vision. Trust me, we will get there kind of thing. Underneath, there have been a couple public shifts, some people leaving X prior to this announcement. And of course, I've had a really great time. This has been amazing, life-changing, and I'm moving to pursue things that are more in alignment with what I want to see. Yeah.
Speculation, right? Because it's like, whenever somebody leaves, when someone like top at OpenAI leaves, or even just writes an X post, it's like everyone's on it, right? It's like, oh, why did that person leave? And then there's speculations like, Elon's a very hard to work with, and you put in a lot of your time and so on. So I don't know until like the person actually puts. There's some people who put like an actual like a big, this is why I left for this specific reason because I can't do this. That's a pretty valid, right? But then there's always the speculation of like, I remember the people who left Mira Murati's startup, like why, and then they went back to OpenAI, and then there's these, I don't know if it's verified, something about discrimination or harassment. One of those two was a reason, but I was like, I don't know, and I don't know. I can't trust being on X whenever somebody has a take like that. So, yeah.
So part of what's interesting about that is there was another leak, and it came out of the information which is about as solid as you can get in terms of tech reporting and clearly has the sources. But apparently there's an internal model at OpenAI that OpenAI uses to identify who the leakers are when things are leaked. And if we think about that and the accusation that Mira made that the employee was in fact leaking to OpenAI, like I don't know, dude, is that it's
Okay, so one thing I wanted to show, and it is Elon Musk, and this is the last thing because I got to run. This is what he said. I think this is a recent interview with him. Yeah. Okay. Oh, you still have it. Perfect. So let us play this.
Will not be needed. I think actually things will move, maybe even by the end of this year, to where you don't even bother doing coding. The AI just creates the binary directly, and the AI can create a much more efficient binary than can be done by any compiler. So just say create optimized binary for this particular outcome, and you actually bypass even traditional coding. That there's no that's an intermediate step that actually will not be needed probably by, I'd say, the end of this year.
So, Elon's always been the more, I guess, tech optimist out of everything. And, I think he said like AGI by this year sometime, while everyone else is like 2030 around there or longer. So, but everything he lines up with what Dario Amodei said, because, 6 to 12 months where AI is going to take over, like can automate all the, like, same thing with Mustafa Suleyman, like they're pretty kind of in line with each other in, give or take a couple months.
So on this subject, I have something to add, which is first to, kind of recapture what Elon was just saying there. Is he's saying, look, the AI doesn't need to take your English and translate it into some coding language that you humans built. It can go all the way down to the assembler language of the chips that are designed. But this still contains, in that structure that he's describing, it contains the stumbling block, which is the energy requirement of the current hardware that we use for computation. So now there's a 2 times unicorn exit entrepreneur named Naveen Rao, who just got what I think is the largest seed investment I've ever heard of, $475 million for a company called Unconventional AI. So this is really in alignment with what Elon is saying. He says we have to engineer a more efficient computational substrate specifically for AI. So not to run the coding languages that we have, but rather to go more directly into the process in a way that mimics or is inspired by, at least, the low power requirements of the human brain. But what that means is you've got to go directly to the neurons, not, simulate neurons' activities with some kind of code implementation. So there are inefficiencies in the way that we do it today. And this startup is going to achieve, its mission is to achieve biology scale energy efficiency in a combination of AI tools that are on the software side and on the hardware side that addresses that much more directly. So they don't give you a whole lot of details about what they know and what's behind this $475 million being poured into them in order to pursue it. But what I will read here is it said, can we provide a software interface to the inherent physics of silicon? So in essence, we will run the neural network on the physics directly rather than simulating them with code in a physical system.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Wow. Yeah. So, and the company got valued in that 475 million seed at $4.5 billion. So out of the gate, on the strength of Naveen Rao's multi-exit leadership and this next wave, if you will. Like, forget quantum computing. This is going to go to a direct AI operating at a level on the silicon that we can no longer really code or observe. I think that's really where we're going, and that's part of the move towards AGI, I think.
So at that level, are we saying that NVIDIA is at risk, or NVIDIA is brilliant for owning the chips and will just go direct to
it won't be
what's
the
happening?
chips. No, this is going to be a new
Okay.
technology. Yeah. So they may be at risk, but they may also be the first to be able to develop the pipeline for the development of those on the design side, right? They're not a manufacturer of chips. TSMC, they were there, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing. They have the science of moving down to closer and closer to the nano scale that's happening on the physics of the chip. This seed round, though, for unconventional AI was backed by Lightspeed, Andreessen Horowitz, right? A16Z, Sequoia, a major VC company, Future Ventures, Jeff Bezos, among other amazing investment partners. And by the way, Naveen Rao is personally investing $10 million, while owning, I'm sure, a very large portion of the whole thing.
Part of why I'm asking is because that valuation seems to imply that there's some big shift, right? Like NVIDIA, like you have the ability
That's right.
to bypass something like that. And what I didn't hear, and I'm interested and eked out, if you watched any of the sci-fi shows, we've talked about this too. I did not hear Wetware, which I've seen more experiments with that. And if, like, the brains are the most energy efficient thing, and what has been the research has been expanding so that it used to be that the brain could only be kept alive for a certain amount of time. Now it's like a month or longer, and they're experimenting with mice brains too, not just human brains.
That's a very important direction of development, which is why if you're going to develop, as Naveen Rao intends, software that runs closer to the physics, why not bypass trying to get that interface to silicon and instead just grow neuronal cells in wet petri dishes and assemble them in some way. And that's, I think, what you're referring to, is there are a number of players out there who are trying to develop computational structures that are based on actual living cells.
Yeah, that use actual living cells. And there's a company out of Norway, Sweden, somewhere in that area, I believe, that rents compute in so you can access these kinds of things. Now, why? I mean, if we're really asking why, I think at that point we're having well, there's a lot of conversation happening around, like, again, with people outside the bubble, with muggles, like, why are we doing this? What is the point of creating technology that could disrupt so much of communities, right? Like, let's just talk about why we're doing this. And for me, the why gets capital with a bunch of exclamation points. Why are we taking functional brains out of actual living things and attaching it so that we can do the why that was being asked about before? That just is I think we've crossed a bridge that we really just want to, like, hey, what is
it's a little mind-boggling
movie, right?
One of the advantages of living cells is they can self-replicate. They have their own manufacturing system built into them. They subdivide and then they grow. And so you think about growing computation as opposed to building chips that then simulate the neuronal structures of
Right.
thinking machines.
And that idea, like the real play, I agree, Andy, the real play between those is that you're growing the structure and as long as the energy or whatever you need to put in there, which might be glycose or light or like whatever that is converted into energy that the system can use, the system can grow. And so can the neural network, because that's actually how our brains work. So it's not the same kind of big training up front, which is already referenced as a garden when the way that large language models are trained is a little more like you're putting it in a greenhouse and you've said what you want to grow in some ways, but you're not in charge of how it's growing. It is just growing. And that sort of stops once it's released, and now we're just using inference back and forth. And the idea, I think the big idea of doing it with actual brains, but I can't not think of Battlestar Galactica and the white milky foamy stuff and the chords, like just that's
it's a little mind blowing. And but I want to add one other thing, which is from MIT research in nanotech that's kind of related to this, although not on the wetware side. This is on the more hardware side. MIT researchers have designed silicon structures that perform calculations in an electronic device using excess heat instead of additional electricity.
right.
So one of the byproducts of running electricity through a chip is you get excess heat. Well, they've figured out a way to use that waste heat that's already present in the chip and have the flow and distribution of that heat from some special materials that they've developed form the basis of computation.
Which is great.
Okay, so
Yeah.
which is crazy. Okay, so and all of this is in pursuit to kind of wrap this discussion we've been having. The approach to biologic simulation, that Naveen Rao's Unconventional AI is doing, are ideas about wetware and actually growing intelligent computing that's based on cells that we harvest and then allow to have their own cell lines. Is matched on this other hardware side by efficiency gains in the way that we use the chips and in silicon themselves. And all of this is to try to reduce the incredible power requirements of computation in the world of AI, because that's really the big blocking problem at the moment. And that's what's given rise to lots of protests in local communities saying, we do not want a data center here that's just sucking all the power out of our grid and probably damaging the grid in the process. And so there are going to be dramatic efficiencies that are conceived and developed by institutions like MIT and over in China, alongside the development of hopefully clean nuclear modular power that can add power to the grid much more directly than the current methods that are being used, which by the way are really polluting, like the big methane generators that are being added to the Colossus system that created pollution in the Tennessee region, to support the XAI data centers. Anyway,
Right. If you're burning gas.
Well, things are changing fast, everybody.
We don't
tighten your belts and hold on to your hat or your toupee if you have one. Don't let it fly off in the gusts that are happening to us here in society.
If we don't theme the shows going in, these are structured improv shows about AI, but we touched on the same topic in a bunch of different ways. Anthropic and then OpenAI talking about absorbing some of those costs of data centers. We've talked about different ways. Elon shooting things into space to get the power to run the thing. You're talking about these other options so that the power is less, or we can capture the waste heat, so we're reusing those sorts of things. I think we're on the brink of some real shifts in how efficient power gets, or alternatives. But the other piece that plays into this, I don't remember what the principle is. Carl would know, and maybe you do, Andy, is that while all of that is happening and efficiencies are being created and alternative ways of engaging it, usage is also going up. So we may be in a situation where we are much more efficient and the cost is coming down, but because so many people are using it, the cost is going up.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, just a hopeful note here. The person who came up with this idea at MIT to use the waste heat as a computational structure is Caio Silva, an undergraduate student in physics.
Yeah. I want to say out of the mouths of babes, but I don't know how old they are or any of those things. But yes, I would say the younger.
He's not
right?
20. He's not 20.
No. And right? The people are. Andy and I are not the same age, but closer to each other than we are to Carl. And we grew up in a world where energy was expensive, but it was not something that we were necessarily seeing the negative effects of in the same kind of way that people who are growing up in their teens, 20s, 30s now. They've had a different influence. And so I do think that those some of those solutions are coming.
Just to date myself, and not in a romantic way, but to date myself, when I first built a Heathkit, I built a tube radio. Okay. And the first radio that I got, my father got me, was one of the early General Electric transistor radios. So I started out before there were billions of transistors on a single chip.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. There is still rumor that OpenAI is dropping some things. It's gotten less specific about what it's dropping. But we will be here to talk about it tomorrow, whatever happens today in the world of AI. And we hope you'll join us. And until then, thanks, everybody. Have a great day.